They say dead men tell no tales, but the sea? The sea remembers everything. It remembers the forgotten names, the ships that vanished without a trace, the men who made deals with monsters and then became monsters themselves. They sank beneath the waves, thinking they'd be lost. But legends don't drown, they drift, from one storm to the next, changing shape, trading truth for treasure. And so the stories were told of ghost ships with tattered sails, of cursed hearts still beating in the dark, of Davy Jones and his locker, where time stops, but punishment doesn't. But what if they weren't just stories? It started as a theme park ride. Now it's a billion-dollar franchise. But how did it get there? Let's just say Disney had help from real legends. What if Pirates of the Caribbean wasn't fantasy? Because long before Disney gave us Captain Jack Sparrow and the Flying Dutchman, the sea already had its secrets, and it's been whispering them ever since. All you need to do is listen. When Pirates of the Caribbean debuted at Disneyland in 1967, it wasn't meant to be magical. It was meant to be morbid. Walt Disney's original concept was a slow boat ride through dark caves, skeletons, and burning towns. Not for children, but for adults. And the tone was clear. Dead pirates lined the walls. Cursed gold glittered beneath the bones. A voice echoed through the dark.
Dead men tell no tales.
And here's something they don't exactly advertise on the park maps. When Disneyland first built the Pirates of the Caribbean ride in the 1960s, they had a problem. The fake skeletons looked fake. So, the next logical step, they used real human bones. Donated from UCLA's medical department, actual skeletons were placed on the ride, decorating the treasure room and dungeon scenes. A skull and crossbones above a bed? That was real. Eventually, they were replaced with plastic replicas, at least most of them. Some believe one or two real ones were never removed because they still looked too real. But something happened when it became a movie. The 2003 film Pirates of the Caribbean, The Curse of the Black Pearl, kept the curses, the undead sailors, and the haunted ships. But it also made it fun. Suddenly, the grim world of death and damnation had a charming rum-drinking pirate at the center. Captain Jack Sparrow wasn't just a pirate. He was a trickster god in disguise. He cheated death, outwitted the devil, outran the sea itself. But here's what's wild. The movies didn't make all of this up. The cursed Aztec gold, that was real legend, based on colonial greed and spiritual retribution. Davy Jones's Locker, sailors believed it was a real place, the watery grave at the bottom of the sea, where drowned men waited forever. Even the Flying Dutchman, a ghost ship doomed to sail until Judgment Day, was a story sailors feared centuries before it appeared in a theme park. Disney didn't invent these myths. It turned death into adventure, the underworld into a punchline, and pirates into heroes. But beneath the jokes and eyeliner, something older remains. And every time Jack Sparrow smiles in the face of death, he's smiling through the mask of every sailor who died trying to outrun a curse they found themselves in the middle of. Long before Pirates of the Caribbean became a Disney ride, and decades before Jack Sparrow ever stumbled onto a screen, searching for rum. The stories already existed, just not the way you remember them. Let's start with the Flying Dutchman. The myth dates back to at least the 1700s, a ghost ship said to be cursed to sail the seas forever. Some versions blame a Dutch captain who defied God by sailing into a storm. Others say it's a ship of the dead, ferrying lost souls across the ocean. Sailors swore they saw its glowing sails through fog. In maritime lore, spotting the Dutchman was an omen, usually of death. Then there's Davy Jones. Not a real person, but a figure rooted in old nautical superstitions. Sailors believed he ruled the bottom of the sea. To go to Davy Jones's locker meant to die at sea, your body claimed by the depths. Some theories trace the name to a real 17th century pirate or tavern keeper who drugged men and sold them to ships. Others say he was the devil himself in sailor folklore. Even the idea of cursed treasure comes from actual legends, like the tale of Captain William Kidd, who was hanged in 1701 and rumored to have buried gold that was never found. People claimed it was cursed. Anyone who looked for it met a bad end. These weren't just scary stories. They were a way to explain what sailors couldn't control. Shipwrecks, disappearances, storms, and death. Pirates lived in a world ruled by an unforgiving sea. Pirates didn't just rob ships. They collected stories and left behind legends that blurred the line between myth and reality. Blackbeard, for instance, whose real name is Edward Teach. He didn't need magic to be terrifying. He'd tie slow-burning fuses into his beard, so smoke would curl around his face during battle. Witnesses said he looked like a demon rising from hell. But it gets stranger. When Blackbeard died in 1718, it's said he was shot 5 times and stabbed more than 20, yet he kept fighting. According to legend, after his head was cut off and tossed into the sea, his body swam around the ship before sinking. Then there's Bartholomew Roberts, one of the most successful pirates in history. He took over 400 ships, but rarely drank, never allowed gambling, and enforced strict rules. His nickname, Black Bart. But some said he made a deal with something darker. That's why no navy could catch him, until he was hit by a lucky musket ball. His body was thrown into the sea before it could be captured. And don't forget Calico Jack Rackham, famous mostly for the 2 women on his crew, Anne Bonny and Mary Read, disguised as men, deadlier than most of the men aboard. Some tales say they escaped capture by claiming to be pregnant. Others say they vanished, never to be seen again. Their fates lost to history. But here's what ties them all together. The ocean was seen as a supernatural force. Storms weren't just weather, they were punishment. Whirlpools were portals. Ghost ships were warnings, and many pirates believed if you died at sea without proper rites, your soul was trapped, cursed to wander the waters forever. In Curse of the Black Pearl, the treasure glows under moonlight. The coins clink with the weight of damnation, and every piece stolen comes with a price. But that's not just fantasy. Disney may have given us cursed Aztec gold, but there were real stories, whispered through the centuries, about treasure taken from the wrong hands and the wrath that followed. The Spanish conquest of the Americas wasn't just brutal. It was drenched in blood and gold. Hernán Cortés and his men tore through the Aztec Empire, burning cities, toppling gods and stealing everything they could carry. Gold, yes, but not just gold. Sacred artifacts, sun discs from temples, masks meant for the dead, jewelry from gods. And somewhere in that devastation, a legend was born that the treasures and gold they took was cursed, not by witches, but by the land itself, by ancestors buried beneath pyramids, by gods whose names were never meant to be spoken by outsiders. Spanish soldiers wrote of strange fevers, hallucinations, entire expeditions lost in the jungle. Some said the gold drove men mad. Others said it whispered, and that curse followed them home. Ships sank in calm seas. Treasure vanished in locked vaults. Whole fortunes dissolved into ruin. In folklore across cultures, there's one pattern that never changes. Take what's sacred and pay the price. From Egyptian tombs to Incan temples, explorers have always feared what they stole. Not because of superstition, but because something always seemed to go wrong afterward. Curse became the only word big enough to explain it. So when Pirates of the Caribbean made cursed Aztec gold the center of its first film, it wasn't just inventing drama. It was tapping into something ancient, something real. The deep-rooted fear that some treasure isn't meant to be touched because it was never treasure to begin with. It was an offering, a promise, a warning. And when that's broken, not even the sea can protect you. They say she sails faster than any ship alive. Black sails, no wind, no sound, only silence and then doom.
You've seen a ship with black sails that's crewed by the damned and captained by a man so evil that hell itself spat him back out.
The Black Pearl isn't just a ship, she's a ghost. In the world of Pirates of the Caribbean, she was cursed, burned, sunk, and still came back. But what if she was never fantasy to begin with? Because long before the Pearl was born on our screens, the sea already whispered of ships like her. There was the Lady Lovibond. The Lady Lovibond was supposedly a real ship that set sail on February 13th, 1748. According to the legend, the ship's captain had just gotten married and brought his new bride on board to celebrate their honeymoon, something that was considered very bad luck at sea. But here's where it turns dark. The first mate was also in love with the bride. Overcome with jealousy and rage, he deliberately crashed the ship on the Goodwin Sands, a notoriously dangerous sandbank off the Kent coast. Since that night, sailors have claimed to see the Lady Lovibond's ghost ship reappearing off the coast every 50 years, glowing green or sailing silently in the fog. The Mary Celeste, found drifting in 1872 with dinner still on the table. The crew vanished. No signs of struggle. Just gone. Okay, the Mary Celeste wasn't found with food on the table in quite the dramatic way people say. That's become part of the legend. There was food aboard and no signs of struggle, but the story grew over time. And the Flying Dutchman, a cursed vessel doomed to sail forever, spotted through fog and lightning, always vanishing before you could cry out. The Black Pearl is their echo, a ship that shouldn't exist, a legend that outlived the men who made it. In the story, she was once the Wicked Wench, a slave ship, burned and sunk, only to rise again from the depths. Reborn with black sails and vengeance in her hull, Captain Jack Sparrow made a deal with Davy Jones to raise her. But like all deals with the sea, the cost was steep. She came back cursed, and she never forgave. But here's the truth. The Pearl isn't based on one ship. She's based on all of them. Every story where the sea takes something, a crew, a ship, a soul, and sends back something that doesn't belong anymore. She is the myth of the unquiet vessel, the one that returns when it shouldn't, carrying the weight of betrayal, revenge, and the dead. She always comes back, because legends like her may be more real than we realize. Before Pirates of the Caribbean turned him into a tentacled sea lord with a broken heart, Davy Jones was already one of the ocean's darkest myths. But no one agrees on who he was. Some sailors swore he was the devil of the deep, not a man, but a myth who waited at the bottom of the ocean for drowned souls. Others said he was once real, a sailor who went mad, locked his doomed crewmates in a chest, and sank with them. Some stories say he ran a pub, poisoned his patrons, and threw their bodies to sea. Others say Davy Jones never had a face, just a locker, a place no one escapes. Because for centuries, Davy Jones's locker was the sailor's purgatory. Not fire and brimstone, but pressure, darkness, silence. A graveyard for ships, a prison for men. You didn't meet Davy Jones. You ended up inside his grasp. The sea, after all, keeps what it takes. And by the time Disney got to him, the myth had already transformed into something even worse. A man with no heart. Literally. But beneath that, the myth was already rotting. They made him a man who cut out his heart, locked it away. Because love betrayed him. Because grief drowned him. Because he couldn't bear to feel anything anymore. His grief turned him into something the sea could claim. That's not just a villain. That's a cautionary warning. Davy Jones is what happens when sorrow outlives the soul. When you try to outlive your pain by losing your humanity. When you spend too long at sea and the sea makes you part of itself. His ship, the Flying Dutchman, doesn't sail on water. It sails on regret. His crew is corpses growing coral. Men who were too afraid to die and ended up never really living. And that's what makes him terrifying. Not the curses, not the krakens, but the truth. He's not chasing you. He's waiting for you. Because every sailor meets Davy Jones eventually. Davy Jones, as Disney imagined him, is heartbreak with a face. Pirates of the Caribbean didn't invent him. They gave him a story, a shape, a reason. But the real Davy Jones, he was never meant to be understood, only feared, because he wasn't a man. He was the sea itself, and the sea never forgets. In Pirates of the Caribbean, Calypso is the one they fear, but still turn to. She's the reason storms rise. The one who loved Davy Jones and cursed him when he broke his promise. But you probably wouldn't be surprised to know that the idea of Calypso didn't start with Disney. She comes from Greek mythology, first mentioned in the Odyssey, written nearly 3,000 years ago. In it, Odysseus washes ashore on an island called Ogygia, where a beautiful nymph, Calypso, keeps him captive. She falls in love with him and offers him immortality if he stays. He stays on her island, Ogygia, for 7 years, but he's miserable, longing for home. She's keeping him there. He's not exactly chained up, but it's clear he's not free to leave either. It's only when Zeus sends Hermes to demand she release Odysseus that she agrees to let him go. She's forced by divine command, and she helps him build a raft to leave. But it's what she represents that matters more. Calypso wasn't just a goddess. She was a personification of the sea itself. Isolated, alluring, powerful enough to hold you forever, but with no guarantee you'll survive it. In Greek, her name, Calypso comes from the word calypto, meaning to conceal, to hide, or to cover. That's what she does. To sailors of the ancient world, the sea wasn't just water. It was alive. It had moods, willpower, a voice. You prayed to it. You feared it. It was calm until it wasn't. And the sea, like Calypso, had rules. Break your oath and you'd be swallowed. Forget to offer tribute, and the winds would turn. Mess with something sacred, and your ship would never reach port. There were real rituals to avoid her wrath. Libations poured into the ocean. Sailors tossed gold or wine overboard before a voyage. Some even kept figureheads of women at the bow, not as decoration, but as guardians of the ship and to see danger ahead. Disney borrowed that, but they added something darker. In Dead Man's Chest, Calypso is no longer just a lonely goddess. She's been trapped in a mortal body, reduced by men who feared her power. That's not fantasy. It mirrors centuries of folklore, where powerful women tied to nature were demonized, bound, or destroyed. In medieval Europe, sea goddesses became sirens, temptresses who dragged men to their death. In ancient myth, the sea was sacred, a living force, a place where gods ruled and spirits whispered. But when Christianity swept across the world, the ocean changed. It stopped being sacred and started becoming dangerous. In Scripture, the sea was chaos, a place of punishment, of floods and beasts and exile. It swallowed sinners. It separated heaven from earth, and the spirits that were once worshipped beneath its waves became monsters. The sea became sin. Female spirits of the water, such as Rusalka, were rewritten as curses. Rusalka were once benign water nymphs in Slavic myth, turned into vengeful, drowned maidens. Calypso became what the world feared most, a force they couldn't control. So they did what stories always do. They rewrote her into a witch, a seductress, a villain. And in Pirates, the sea gets her revenge. So what does it all mean? Pirates of the Caribbean gave us sword fights and sea monsters, rum jokes and cursed gold. But under the makeup, under the epic music, under Jack Sparrow's stumbling, there's something older, stranger, darker. The sea has always been real. What you see in it depends on what you bring. Greed, fear, sorrow, it brings it all out. And when we turned it into a ride, then a movie, we weren't escaping the past. We were sailing straight into it. Because the Flying Dutchman, the cursed gold, Davy Jones and his locker, they weren't all made up. They were remembered. And Disney didn't invent those legends. It just gave them costumes. So next time you hear the music swell or see the black pearl cut across the waves, remember this. Some legends were never meant to be fiction. Some curses never needed magic, only men who believed in them. And sometimes, dead men do tell tales. You just have to know where to listen. Let me know which Pirates of the Caribbean movie is your favorite or your favorite line.
Savvy.
If you liked this video, don't forget to give it a like and subscribe to join our growing crew of mystic seekers. Thanks for watching.
Sailing down along the coast of High Barbary.